Hey, this is Passy from Passy's World of ICT, the guy with the white hat. And today we got another Visual Basic learning lesson for you. This one's all about the case statement, and we're going to make a couple of programs to just show you how to use that. And we're also going to learn how to use the combo box and make drop-down lists in Visual Basic today. So let's get started. Okay, so the Visual Basic case statement. So we're going to have two programs which use the case statement. So the first one's going to be a simple number range identifier program, and then the next one after that will be the area and volumes units identifier. So let's just take a look at those and see how they work. Just a note, if you're in the USA watching this, we've got this in metric units like millimeters, centimeters, kilometers. So you guys can just use inches and yards, just your measurement units instead. It's easy to change that in the program. But let's just jump across here to where we've got these going. So the first one here, the number range identifier, the idea here is if we put in the number 5, for example, and click go, it just says that number's between 1 and 5 inclusive. The same thing happens for 4. If you put in a number like, say, 6, that's between 6 and 8 inclusive is the range result we get there. If you put in the number 9, that's equal to 9 or 10 for that number. And if you put in a number which is outside the range, because this is set up to like do 1 to 10. So if we put in 20 and click the go button, that's just going to say not between 1 and 10 inclusive. Okay, so that's that particular program. Then the second one is the same thing again, except we've just expanded a bit and we've got the combo box, the drop down list. So here we can just do simple pick and click. So remember, if you're in the USA, use inches and yards, but let's just go with centimeters here and click the go button. It tells us the area units are square centimeters, the surface area of the object would be in square centimeters, and the volume units would have to be in cubic centimeters. And it just does it for the different units. So if we choose kilometers, it'll do kilometers, millimeters, it does millimeters, and so on. So let's get started with how we can develop these two different programs. So we're going to use the case statement and you're going to learn how to use the combo box. Okay, so the number range program, as we saw in that example, I enter the number between 1 and 10. It's going to nominate a certain range therein. So the ranges we've chosen are between 1 and 5 inclusive, 6 and 8 inclusive, 9 or 10, or it could be otherwise not in that range. If they don't do a number from 1 to 10, it's just going to report that it's outside the range. So that's the form we designed there, where we just had where they can put in the number, click go, and then we get the result. Now, the pseudocode design for the program, because that's where we usually start off with our programs and applications in Visual Basic, or any programming language for that matter. We just want to print a message onto the screen for them to enter their number, have some sort of mechanism where they can type it in. In our case, it's a text box that they can type the number into over here. And then we're going to do the case statement process. So we're going to have case of numbers. So if the case is between 1 to 5, so if the situation or the case is that they've entered a number between 1 and 5, it's going to output between 1 and 5 inclusive in that range result text box area. If they've put 6, 7, or 8, 6, 7, 8, any of those numbers there, it's going to output between 6 and 8 inclusive, 9 or 10, so you can use the or statement as part of a case statement. That's going to output equal to 9 or 10. And then we need an else here. So if it's not any of these three situations, we'll go to the else statement and it's going to say your number's not between 1 and 10 inclusive. And that's where we end the case there. Okay, so that's the pseudocode for the program. So you could have used if else. So this is how we've coded it, or we're going to be coding it in Visual Basic using the case statement. And for this one, the case statement's just a lot neater and easier to understand than the if else. If we wanted to do it with if else, it'd be a lot longer and more complicated. So we'd have to say, if your number's greater than or equal to 1 and the number happens to be less than or equal to 5, well then it must be between 1 and 5 inclusive. Else, if the number is between greater than or equal to 6 and less than or equal to 8, well then it's between 6 and 8. Then we have another else, so we have this sort of cascading else if statement. If it's 9 or 10, output 9 or 10, else output number between 1 and 10. So you can see this gets really long and kind of cascading and a bit complicated looking. Notice on the left-hand side how much more compact and simpler it is to read and understand with the case statement. So the case statement is really handy to use if you've got situations that are suitable for it. Okay, so it's a lot neater, tidier, and cleaner than a big long if-else cascading statement like the one on the right. So just keep that in mind when you're doing your programming on future projects. Okay, now for the form, the actual detailed design of the form is we just need 2 labels, 2 text boxes, and a button. So these guys in the dark writing here are labels. Now the program's not interacting with them or changing their values, so they don't need to be given special names. They can just be left, we can be a bit lazy and just leave them as label 1, label 2, label 3, whatever Visual Basic decides to call them. But for these text boxes and buttons, they need to be named with the Hungarian notation and camel case. So if you're not familiar with that, we had a lesson on that right back at the start of the programming course. And this one will be called TXT because it's a text box, text input number. This one's a button, so we call it BTN. That's a Hungarian abbreviation, BTN Go. And this is text output result called TXT at the start of it because that is a text box. And if you've been following along with our course and doing all of the lessons, this should be becoming very familiar to you now, the Hungarian notation with the camel case naming for objects which are on our forms. So anyway, that's the form done. And once you've designed the form, then you double click on the Go button and that takes you into the program code for the application. All right. And this is the sort of code we need to enter in. So from our previous lesson when we were adding 2 numbers together, we talked about casting and how you have to convert what's in your text box on the form, like the TXT input number value, into something numeric that the program can actually process. So we do this cint, which is casting as integer or converting to integer, and our number, we're just calling it number here, that's going to work out what was in the text box, turn it into an integer, and then we're ready to go. Then we can check our numbers. So we have select case, check out this number value, and if it's 1 to 5, if the situation is that it's 1 to 5, we put between 1 to 5 inclusive. If it's in a group, so you can also code a group in the case statement, which you just do by putting commas in here, like 6, 7, 8 with commas. That's between 6 and 8. You can have the range specified with a TO, so 9 to 10 is another way to do it. And that's how we sort of did our 9 or 10. We just said 9 to 10. And then we need one on the end, a case else, so that if it's not any of these situations, then it has to be something else. And that's what we put on the very end. And we just tell them it's not between 1 and 10. So you can set up the form and sort of type this program in, or if you've got the resources for this lesson, if your teacher's given them to you, a trainer, or you've got them yourself, and we'll talk about that later, how you get them, you can copy and paste that code in and see that it all works like we showed you at the start of this lesson. All right, now you're now ready to move on to the second program once you finish that one. And this is going to be the same sort of thing, except we're going to add combo box with drop-down list onto it. So this one's going to determine area units and volume units when we put in a particular length measurement, like millimeters, centimeters, meters, or kilometers. If you're in the USA, remember, use your inches, yards, miles instead, your length measurements. And the idea is if they like put in millimeters as the input, if they pick that from the drop-down list, it'll tell them, okay, area stuff has to be in square millimeters and your volume has to be in cubic millimeters on the answers which are calculating for that particular thing. So we're going to reuse these case statement drop-down combo list in later lessons. So although this is fairly simple in this lesson, the combo box drop-down list for units will be very useful when we do our next lesson, which is on rectangle, area, and perimeter. But in this area and volume project we're doing right here, we're going to learn how to set up a combo box. So with a combo box, what happens is instead of a text box, you drag out from the tools a combo box and use that, and it has a little arrow on the side, and the idea is when the user clicks that arrow, they get a pick and click list, so they can just pick something off the list there by clicking on it. Okay, so how do you set up one of these combo boxes? Okay, so we'll get onto that in a minute. First, we're going to do the form. So how do we set up the form? Now, the form just needs labels and text boxes, and you'll notice it's very similar to the one we did in the first program. So we can actually kind of copy and paste from that other project into this project, okay? And we might just go across to our Visual Studio and show you how to do that. So I just need to find out where I am here. We've finished with that. That's what we're trying to make. If we go over to here. Okay, so this is our number range solution. So when you're going back into a project, you click the SLN file from your folder that it's built, and then we go into the project. Okay, now sometimes the form isn't showing up. Like if you click the .sln file, so let's just backtrack here. When your project's finished, it builds a folder for the project where all the components are in. So this is the one for the number range identifier. If we click into that folder, there's a file called the .sln solution file, okay? And if you double click that one in Windows File Manager here, it'll open up the project in Visual Studio. Now, often when it opens up, there's nothing there on sort of this work area in the middle. So over here, there's the Solution Explorer, and there is our form here, form1.vb. So if you just double click on that, that should open it up, and then you've got your form there. Now, what we can do is we can also go File, and let's start a new project, okay? So this is going to be a Windows form application. This is going to be our sort of, let's just call it volume units. Just call it volume units test, and click OK. And on this one, we've got a blank form here, so you can make this form a little bigger. Now, what you can do is you can go back to the other project, which still should be open, but it is not open. So I think we will have to open that up again. The idea is that we should have two versions of Visual Studio running at the same time. I think when we did File New in the current one, it just closed that one down. All right, so now we've got this one open, and over here we've got our new one, okay, which we're just doing by the tray down the bottom of the screen here. So on this one, you can actually just like click on one item here, like number range identifier, and do Control A, which means select everything in there. So just Control A, CTRL key with the letter A, and then you can go Control C to copy all those guys, and just from the tray at the bottom of your screen there, click on that and go to the new program, click on its form, and you can Control V it in. All right, so that's going to give us most of the stuff we need. And you can see we can just change the wording of the labels here down in their properties, like their text properties. And this one here, we need three of these. We needed one for area, one for surface area, and one for volume. So if you hold down the Shift key, we can click that particular label, hold down the Shift key, click the other one. And if you go Control C, Control V, Control V, you'll get two lots of them. And so we're just doing Control C, Control V on these. That didn't stay stuck together, not to worry. And then you can get these three boxes here. So often you can build a new form for a new project very quickly by just opening up your old one in Visual Basic, and you can grab anything you need off there and then going to your new one and just pasting it on. Okay, so that's just something to be aware of that's extremely useful. All right, so doing all that, this is the form that's set up. So we've got labels here, and we only need to name the items on the form that the program's using and changing. So all of these labels here, which are just sort of notes to the user about what's what on the form, these ones in dark writing. They don't need special names, but all of the text boxes do need special names, and so does the button. And you should kind of be getting used to this sort of thing now. Now, the Hungarian abbreviation for a combo box is a CBO. Okay, combo box. Now, I suppose we should have shown you where you get a combo box from too, because that might not be immediately clear either. Now, have we still got that project open or not? Or did I close them all down? Okay, I think I closed them all down. Let's just go here. Let's go to our volume units, the solution file, and open that one up. Okay, let's get the form open here. Okay, so this guy here, the combo box, where did that come from? So in our toolbox over here on the left, we've just got all Windows forms, and these are in alphabetical order. So it's just this one, the combo box. So when you slide that out, it kind of makes just like a text box looking thing, except it does have the drop down arrow on it. Now, if you run it, let's just run that quickly. Waiting. It won't have anything in the drop down list yet. We're going to tell you how to do that. But anyway, that made the combo box. See, this one's finished and we've got the items in the list. But anyway, that's your combo box versus your text box. So that's where you get that from. So you just drag that one out instead of dragging out the text box. Now, where's my slides gone? Here we go. All right, so that's how we get combo box, and the Hungarian name for it is CBO. All right, this is just BTN Go. These guys here are text boxes, so they're named TXT in their name. Now, we've been a bit lazy there. These should have probably been made labels. You can make these labels with a white background and a single board around them, so they look exactly like a text box. But when you make labels, people can't type into them. But we're just going to assume when people use our program here, they're not going to go do silly things and go and type and change the answers that were given anyway when you clicked go. But anyway, you could make those labels, but we've just done it quick and easy, just making them text boxes there. Okay, so how do you make the drop-down list? On your combo box, in the properties for that combo box you've got on there, there's one called items, and then you've got next to that the ellipsis or the three triple dots as we call them, and that takes you into the expression builder. So if you click on that, it'll actually open up this expression builder. And what'll happen is you've got this blank screen and you just type in like MM, press enter, CM, press enter, put in all the things that you want to have in your drop down list, and then you click the OK button, and then it'll be ready to go on the form. So when you click onto that arrow there, it's going to have all of those things there, okay? So that's that, all right? So the other thing is, how do you tell that they've clicked on centimeters, perhaps, and that's the selection they've made? Well, this combo box had a special Hungarian name, CBO input length units is what we decided to call it. And when they click on that, it changes a property in the combo box, a property or a method, and that one is called the selected item. So in our program code, to find out which one they actually clicked on here, you need the name of the thing, CBO input lengths, and then you need to have selected item. That's the property which tells you what they've actually picked and clicked. So we'll have to code a fairly long thing here, CBO input length units, the name of it, dot, and then selected item. So we're going to put that in our code. Now, the other thing we're also going to do is in the properties for that combo box, when you go to its bottom right hand corner properties in Visual Basic, set the tab index to 1. Now what that means is that the first thing when the program opens up that it's going to go to is this combo box. It'll be in position 1. So with the tab key, you can actually tab around your form and go from this one to this one to this one to this one. But we want it to open up and be all ready for them to pick and click in the combo box. So we just set tab index 1, and that will happen. The cursor will go straight to the combo box when the program runs to make it a better user experience for the user. Okay, now there is a problem with that combo box that someone can actually go in there and type over the top of what's there. So they could type in their own unit, like microns, which are really tiny units of measurement. We don't have microns catered for in our program, so we don't want them to be able to do that. That will cause things not to turn out the way they should. So you can change that again in the properties for this combo box. If you go down to drop down style, the default is for it to be set to drop down, and that allows them to type in things like microns. That's not what we want. You need to change the property there to drop down list. Okay, so on drop down style for the combo box, make sure it's on drop down list. And once you've done that, they won't be able to type their own values in. They can only pick and click from the items that are in the list. So anyway, finally we're ready to double click the go button on that form and write the program code. And this is the code here, and there's a fair bit of it, but it's all pretty much the same once you write the first bit. So we've just dimensioned some variables here. So we have to have our string length unit. All right, so whatever they selected in the combo box, rather than have that really long name, we're just going to use string length unit just to shorten it and make it easier and simpler to see in the program code. And we just dimension our string area unit, our surface area unit, and our volume unit. So we just dimensioned an input variable and the 3 output variables here, which is kind of pretty standard sort of thing to do in programs. Then we have our case statement. So we've got select case and we've got end select. That's how you code it in Visual Basic. And then everything within the case statement here, inside that case statement, that needs to be pushed in, okay, with the tab key. So you tab in and you have, if the case is that they've picked millimeters. All right, so we're just seeing what is string length unit. And remember, string length unit up here was what they'd put and selected from the combo box from the list. So if it's millimeters, we need square millimeters, cubic millimeters for volume. Maybe they picked centimeters, in which case it's just going to be in centimeters, and so on and so on. But also have just the else statement there, even though we did make that combo box bulletproof so they couldn't pick anything else. They could leave it blank and not pick anything at all and click the go button. And that's why we need this else here. So always have a case else at the end of your case statement, which is just for, here we just put that that's not found, okay? Couldn't find a valid unit for some reason. And then we need to just put our results here, these working variables that are in the program, put them across into those text boxes on the form so that they will display onto the screen. And that's pretty much the whole program. And notice we've got kind of the IPO thing happening here, which we'll talk about more in other lessons. The input, then we have the processing, and then we have the output. So that's a very standard program structure, which you'll start to get used to as you do more of our course. All right, you then need to do plenty of testing. So test that it works with kilometers, test that it works with centimeters, millimeters. So we kind of stack them up here. Make sure you do all of the tests and test all of the combinations. Now, what if they don't pick something and they just click the go? All right, so we always need to make sure our program handles that okay, and make sure we cover that in the testing that we do. So leave this guy blank, don't pick and click any units, and then click the go button. And then it goes to that very bottom else in the case that we were talking about just before and says valid area unit not found. Okay, so they didn't put anything in, so we can't give them any specific answers, but we have catered for them just leaving it blank, all right, with that else statement. So if we're doing string data like this, where it's kind of letters and sentences and things like that, the program will cope okay. Like even if we didn't have that else there, they'd just click go and these would stay blank, like nothing would happen. But if you've got a program that's processing numbers and you leave blank inputs, that's a whole nother story, and that can really cause some problems. Okay, so programs which process numerical data, they don't like blank or empty inputs in text boxes. So if you leave that blank on the number range identifier program, what'll happen is when you try and click the go button to run it, you'll get this thing, this X, where it's all broken up. You've broken the program and crashed it and smashed it and it's all ruined totally. unhandled exception and so on. All right, so when the program receives the blanks, it crashes with this exception error. Now, the reason it does that is a bit technical. If you've been doing our course, we did talk about a little bit about ASCII character values. So the computer doesn't work off letters and numbers in the English language like we do. It kind of has to turn it into its own language. And, well, why does it do that? Why doesn't it just speak English like the rest of us do, or a lot of the world does? Well, that's because it's an electronic device and it needs to have things in something which is more closer to an electronic form, using ones and zeros, especially if it needs to do numbers. So anyway, these ASCII codes which represent each letter and number, they're kind of good for sentences and words, but they don't work for mathematics. So when the computer sees something in a text box, it doesn't see a number, it just sees some characters and it can't process them. It can't do any math work on them. So it needs them in binary, kind of 1, 0, 1, 1, which is on and off, which is how electrical switches work. Like when you turn a light on and off, it only has two conditions. It can be either on or off. And that's how computers work with this binary kind of stuff. And we need to be able to do that like int or CDBL conversion to get that into a binary thing. And if it's blank, you'd think, well, why doesn't the stupid computer just assume 0? But it doesn't work that way. If it's blank, it says, hey, I ain't got no number here. What are you asking me to do number stuff for? And it just calls it quits straight away and the program crashes. Okay, now we did have this problem in the adding two numbers lesson, which was a previous lesson, and we showed you how to fix that using try, catch, and try processing. So you could go back and look at that and put that processing into the number range identifier to prevent this crashing. Okay, so that's a little revision task for you guys to do. Go back and look at the add two numbers lesson, look at how we use the try, catch, and try to catch the exception before it crashed the program, and fix the program with kind of like a message box that pops up that says, hey, you need to enter something into that text box, buddy, or we can't do any processing, we cannot continue. Okay, now how did we find one of the answers we need? It was Googling and Stack Overflow, so we'll just mention this. We're going to mention it again and again to you, that when you're having a problem in your program, like we had a problem, how could we take that combo box and just limit it so they could only pick and click from the list and not just type in their own value like micron or something? How you do that is we Googled the problem, and then Google brings up a list of results. Always go to the Stack Overflow ones because they're the best ones. It's like this forum where programmers put up problems and solutions, and it is just an excellent resource when you're there just coding on your own, doing things. All right, so we just typed into Google Visual Basic Combo Box limit to list. So we wanted to limit it to the actual pick and click list. And then one of the things was Stack Overflow things. So in the Stack Overflow things, we thought this looked promising, how to lock the combo box so that the text and items cannot be changed. So we clicked on that one, and sure enough, in Stack Overflow, some programmer had kindly put up the answer there that you needed to go to the drop-down style property and make sure it was on drop-down list. Okay, so that's how we found that answer out, because we didn't know how to do it. We'd done this sort of thing in Microsoft Access, the limit to list, but it's a totally different property you use. It's this style property, which was a bit hard to kind of pick out that would be the one to use. But thankfully, Stack Overflow had the answer, as in 99% of cases it does. The other thing we'll mention is that we've now got our programming course, we've got it up on our website. So we have a website as well on the internet, Passy's World of ICT. And if you click on the programming tab there across the top index, you'll get to the programming course. And so here's the web address for that. And we'll just show it to you quickly. We've got it up here in the browser. Okay, so Passy's World of ICT. So if you click on programming, it'll take you to the programming course. Just scroll down here. It tells you a bit about the course. And we've got all our lessons that we've done so far. So these are the lessons, and it's suggested that you do them in this particular order here. So they're mainly Visual Basic. We did have a couple of Python ones that we've done. So we've been talking about that adding up to numbers lesson, this one here. So let's click this link, click here to go to lesson, and this will take you to another page which has an overview of what we were doing in that lesson. It has some of the code there, just shows you a screen. This was the overview, and you can see we did add in some adding, try, catch, end, try. So you could go to the YouTube video for that, go to the YouTube description, find the timeline index and go to exactly that part of the video. Or you could download the presentation and just scroll through that and find your answer there about how to use the try, catch, end, try, which is your little homework assignment to stop that case program from crashing. Alrighty then, so that's it from us for another Visual Basic lesson. So hope you enjoyed this and have fun programming in Visual Basic. Remember, subscribe to our YouTube channel because we put out videos every week, usually on the weekend, and they're mainly going to be programming videos coming up in the foreseeable future. And there is also now the Passy's World of ICT website where you can go and check out the full programming course and see the lessons that are there, what was in them, and what order you need to do them in. So that's it for this week. And if you found this video helpful, make sure you give it a like on YouTube. And again, subscribe to our channel. Thank you very much.